everyone, my name is Katie and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm ranking metal albums. It's supposed to be Metal Monday today, just ignore the fact that it's Wednesday. I'm gonna gaslight you guys into thinking it's Monday. Anyways, I'm gonna be ranking a list of albums that are super iconic, legendary, those really influential, important metal albums. I've been so excited to film this and have been trying so hard to find the time to do it. So here we go. This is what the ranking situation is looking like. So the top tier is going to be God tier. That's just the ones that I personally couldn't live without. By the way, this ranking is mostly going to be based on my personal taste. I might have other factors in there a little bit, like the influence the album had on the world and culture, but most of the time it's going to come down to just my personal opinion. So God tier is going to be just those albums that I think are legendary, couldn't live without them. The next one's self-explanatory, great, decent. Not for me. This is just going to be the ones that I respect. I don't think they're bad. It's just not my personal taste. Then we have Why Was This Made? And that's going to be the albums that I think are objectively bad and shouldn't exist. I don't know if there's actually an album like that on this list, but we'll find out. And at the very bottom is Haven't Listened. This is just going to be the albums I either have never heard or haven't listened to in so long that I can't really form an opinion on. So let's get into it. First we have High on Fire, Blessed Black Wings. So I do really like this album. It's kind of like if Motorhead, Slayer, and Celtic Frost made a Sludge album together. It's a very good album. I think I might put it in great. It's not necessarily my favorite High on Fire album. I think my favorite one is something like Snakes of the Divine or For the Divine. I think that's the one I listen to the most often, but this one's up there with the greats. It can definitely hold its own. It has a lot of like old school like speed metal, thrash metal vibes, but with the sludgy guitar tones. Next up is Gojira. I don't remember the name of this album, but y'all are gonna hate me for this. We're starting off strong, but I've got to put it in the not for me. I don't think that they're bad. I respect them as musicians. You know, I could put this in haven't listened because I can't remember which albums from this band I have and haven't listened to at this point. I get a little confused. I remember the one about the whales or something. I don't know. I get a little mixed up in my head with this band. But I'm going to say not for me, and this is more of like a band ranking than just this specific album. I can't really get into the progressive stuff that much. I understand it and respect it. I like some progressive, like progressive death metal. I don't know what it is. Something in my brain just doesn't connect. I kind of just lose focus and I feel like I'm not really getting anything out of the music personally, but I do understand why people like it and I respect the talent that it takes to make it. So it's definitely worthy of not for me. Next up, we have Immortal's debut album. Listen, I think this is one of the most important black metal albums ever made. I wonder if there's going to be a black metal album in the God tier for me, but if I did, it would probably be something like this album, but I'm going to put it in the great tier. I think it's very important, very influential. It has a lot of the black metal vibes that I personally like. It has a little bit of atmosphere in it, like that intro track, you hear like the wind blowing and it kind of immerses you into the album. Immortal had a great start. Banger album for the first album. It's not my favorite by them. My favorite one is At the Heart of Winter, but this one holds its own, and that last track, it's like a 9-minute track or something. Best one on the album. Black Sabbath, Paranoid, God tier. We don't even have to talk about it. It's Black Sabbath. So much influence. It's one of the biggest reasons we have rock and heavy metal as we know it today, so don't even have to go into it. Mayhem, you know, I'm gonna put this under the Immortal album. They're kind of like comparable black metal bands, but Immortal does it so much better. I feel like Mayhem is a little bit over talked about just because of their story and how crazy the members themselves were. But for me, I don't really care for this album that much. I'm just gonna say decent. It's fun and everything, but I prefer the Death Crush EP, you know, the Chainsaw Guts Fuck. Like that album, or I guess EP, is just so raunchy and dirty and bloody. Like I feel like that's the Mayhem I really like. This one doesn't have as much as that for me. Master of Puppets. Everyone knows by now that I'm a Metallica fangirl, and of course I'm gonna put that in God tier. I said this in my last Metal Monday video that I think it's a 10 out of 10 album and it perfectly displays everything Metallica is good at in one album. I feel like it's probably their magnum opus. Of course that one's a number one. We don't even have to talk about it. Korn Issues, you know, I used to really like this album. I was a big nu metal fan when I was younger. Now I don't really listen to it much, but I do respect the hell out of this one. It's probably one of the best nu metal albums ever made. Black Sabbath, self-titled. Ooh, I actually like this one better than Paranoid. I'm gonna put it above Paranoid. It's maybe my favorite Black Sabbath, but Master of Reality and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath are right there with it. So I don't know. Tool, I think this is 10,000 Years, you know. I'm gonna have to put it in the probably haven't listened. I know a couple tracks from it, but I have never listened to the full album. So I guess I could say not for me, but haven't listened is more fair. Black Sabbath, Master of Reality, another 10 out of 10 banger. Death Leprosy, God tier, absolutely. Every single Death album could go into the God tier. It has the sophistication of the more technical and progressive stuff, but it has the aggression of old school death metal, so it's just perfect. The Rest in Peace, listen, I've probably talked about this on this channel before, but that's definitely God tier. It's my favorite Megadeth album, one of my favorite metal albums of all time. It's a 10 out of 10. Chef's kiss. I talked about it in my last video, so I won't go on too much about that one. Acid Bath, When the Kite String Pops, which I never thought made any sense. Isn't that the name of this album? What? It's like the balloon string, balloon pop, kite string pop. What? They were definitely on something. Anyways, it's a really fun album. I feel like it sort of sets the tone for this sort of, is it crust punk or sludge metal? I don't really know exactly what genre this is, but it's probably one of the best albums in that genre, so I'm going to put it in the great tier. You need a bath after listening to it, probably an acid bath, but it's dirty in the best way. Suicidal Tendencies. Now, I don't really listen to this genre a lot. Isn't it sort of like a punky crossover thrash thing? I don't remember this album enough to really talk about it. I've only listened to it a few times in my life, mostly because it's Robert Trujillo's former band, so I can't really talk about it that much. Alright, Cannibal Corpse, Tomb of the Mutilated. I always thought it should be Womb of the Mutilated because of the cover, but anyways, in terms of like brutal death metal, it's great, but I don't find myself going back to Cannibal Corpse that much in my older age. I used to when I was younger, but now I prefer more of like the old school death metal stuff. Like, it hits really hard, it has some really cool like chuggy bass lines. Oh man, I should probably put it in great because of that. I'm thinking of like Hammer Smashed Face, that that chugginess. It is pretty cool. It has to go in great. Decent just don't look right. Pantera, Cowboys from Hell. Wow. Okay, listen, hear me out. I used to be a really hardcore Pantera fan, and this is always like the highly regarded Pantera album, and it's really cool. It's a little bit like thrashy in some ways and groove as well, but it's not my favorite Pantera album. It's like not even in the top like 3. I don't know what it is. I think it's definitely worthy of being close to God tier, but I'm actually going to put it in great. Oh no, that don't look right. Ugh. Does it not look right because of the popular opinion on it, or because of my opinion? I don't know. Like, I like Far Beyond Driven a lot, Reinventing the Steel, Great Southern Trendkill. Like, those are my favorite Pantera albums. I feel like I like more of the groove side of them. Not that they don't have this on this album. Oh my gosh, Domination is on this album. Oh, there's a lot of really good songs. Wait, I might have to put it in God tier. Listen, I don't think Pantera has a bad album unless you count their like glam metal, power metal days. We won't talk about that, but when Pantera really started, they don't really have a bad album. I have to put that in God tier. I'm sorry for my moment of weakness. The Domination Breakdown. Oh my god. And like Cemetery Gates. I'm crazy. Deftones. All the Deftone albums are going to go in Not For Me. I don't know what it is about this band. I've tried to get into them so many different times. I feel like I have the sort of personality and style of someone that likes Deftones, and I always thought it seemed like they fit me as a person. And then when I go listen to them, I'm completely bored out of my mind. I don't know what it is. It's not heavy enough. I know that's so cringe to say, like, not everything has to be heavy, but in terms of metal albums, not for me. Avenged Sevenfold, Nightmare. Man, that might be my favorite Avenged Sevenfold album now, looking back in hindsight. Like, they were really my favorite band when I was a teenager, and this album I liked at the time, but it wasn't my favorite. Now looking back, I really appreciate it. It's like a really progressive Avenged Sevenfold album. I think that might be Mike Portnoy's influence on this one when he stepped in and took over for the Rev. I don't know, this one just feels so dark, and like it feels like a goodbye to the Rev in a dark, bittersweet way. And now that I'm older, I appreciate this one so much more, and I'm gonna put it in God tier, and it might be my favorite Avenged Sevenfold album now. Burzum. Listen, it's not a bad album. It's just like, I cannot get behind the person who made it. No. Not for me, or decent. I'm gonna put it in decent because objectively it's kind of good black metal music. I see it right there with Mayhem, which is very fitting. Varg was my least favorite member of Mayhem, and I don't really want to support him because he's kind of crazy. So yeah, that's gonna just have to go in decent. I'm sorry. I could put it in Why Was This Made, but the music isn't that bad. I'm actually less familiar with this Burzum album, so I'm just gonna put in Haven't Listened, but it's pretty much the same as the other one. Linkin Park Hybrid Theory. Man, this is like their 2003 album, right? I've barely listened to this since it came out. Maybe it was 2006. I don't know. But this is one of those things that I just do not go back to anymore. I think Linkin Park is a very talented band, and this album in particular was their best album when I was a fan. I'm gonna probably have to put it in great. Even though I don't listen to it anymore, I did spend a lot of time with it back in the day. Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. I forgot about this one when I was talking about Pantera albums, but that one probably gonna have to go in God tier. Why does that not feel right? Which one's better? Let me know in the comments. Do you think Vulgar Display of Power is better or Cowboys from Hell? Those are like their two most popular ones. Mastodon, I call it the Whale album. I don't even know, but this is actually one of the progressive metal bands that I can get into. I kind of like Dream Theater and a couple other things, but this is the album that I'm going to listen to if I want a more progressive album. I'm going to put it in great, I think. My favorite track from this one is Megalodon, and this is one of the only progressive albums I go back to often. This is probably going to make a lot of people mad, but I don't really listen to Melvins, and I don't really remember what these albums sound like. I'm pretty sure I've listened to the one with the kids on it before. I think they're sort of like a, not sludge, a crust punk band, right? Something like that. I don't know. It's just not my genre that I dip into that much. I'm gonna have to put Haven't Listened. Ooh, that sucks. Next up is Sleep's Dope Smoker. So this is one of the better like stoner doom albums. It only has 2 songs on it, but one song is like an hour and so many minutes long, and then there's like a normal length song on there. I'm gonna put it in great because it's definitely one of the better ones in its genre, but it's best if you're zooted. I'm not familiar with this album, so that's gonna have to go and Haven't Listened. Metallica Black Album. Maybe it's not as good as like Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets and Justice for All, but it's definitely a super, super influential and iconic album. It has to go in God tier because of that. I'm gonna put it below Master of Puppets though. But this is a lot of people's first metal album. It was a huge one for me. Like some of my first days hearing metal was from this album, like Sad But True. Everyone knows that. Enter Sandman. If this album didn't exist, man, a lot of people probably wouldn't have gotten into metal. It's like a super surface level like gateway album. Not to mention, I like Metallica when they're not thrashy. I don't really see the problem with them slowing down and creating more of like a hard rock album. Some people really don't like Metallica if they're not thrash, but for me, that's never been the case. I've always liked the slow, more groovy, hip swinging vibe to this album. Red Ribcage. I think this might be a Tool album, but I don't know. I'm just gonna say Haven't Listened because I don't even recognize it that much. I just realized that earlier I called this Tool album 10,000 Years, which is the wrong name and it's the wrong album. This one is 10,000 Days, and that's the one I haven't listened to. I'm starting to think I've listened to this one. It's hard for me to remember what I have and haven't listened to. The only one I remember specifically is Lateralis, or however you pronounce that. Maybe I should just put Tool in the not for me category because that fits a lot more in my mind because I can't remember what I have and haven't listened to, and that should say enough. Caius, is that how you pronounce this? I've seen them around but have never once listened to them. Have no idea. Sunbather. Does that say Sun Eater or Sunbather? I haven't listened to this. I'm actually not familiar with that at all. Down. This is a really good groove metal album. Back in my Pantera, Lamb of God fangirl days, I was super into Down as well. I'm gonna have to put this one in great. I think it holds its own in what it's trying to do. Another Gojira album, another whale. What's up with the prog bands and whales? I don't know the lore behind that, but not for me once again. Halloween, Keeper of the Seven Keys. This is my favorite Halloween album. I do like Walls of Jericho as well, but you know, I'm kind of confused with Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 and then Part 2. I always considered them the same album because I had a double album when I was younger and listened to them all like together. So I don't really know how to rank them individually, so I'm just gonna say the first and second part are both God tier. One of the best power metal albums and bands ever. Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast. You have to put this in God tier. It's not my favorite Iron Maiden album, which is such a hot take. Probably not. I mean, they have a lot of good albums, so I don't think people would be that mad about that, but it has to be in God tier just because it's so iconic. Judas Priest, Painkiller. Oh my god. My favorite Judas Priest album, and god, seriously one of the best metal albums ever made when it comes to that more like traditional, maybe new wave of British heavy metal / speed metal. Dude, the drumming on this album is out of this world. So I'm gonna have to put it up there with like my real favorites, like Megadeth, Metallica, Black Sabbath. Megadeth, Countdown to Extinction. It is a really good album. It has like Sweating Bullets. It has one of my favorite underrated Megadeth songs, Psychotron. Of course, it has Symphony of Destruction, which is one of the most recognizable riffs of all time. Man, that's gonna have to go in God tier for that reason. It's not necessarily a super thrash album. It has songs that aren't so thrashy on it, but it's kind of balanced. I appreciate that they tried to do like a Black Album moment and be a little bit more mainstream, but they held on to that aggression a little bit. Metallica, Ride the Lightning. We don't even have to talk about this. We all know. God tier. Motorhead, The Ace of Spades. This is one of the most iconic albums ever. Huge for speed metal fans. So for me, would it be weird if I put it in great, but at the top of the great tier? Because I feel like this stuff didn't really age that well for me personally. I think Motorhead sort of had this blueprint they created for a lot of other bands to take and perfect, but I don't find it that enjoyable to listen to this album anymore. Blizzard of Oz. Probably Ozzy's best solo album, right? I do like Diary of a Madman. I like No More Tears, but this one has like a lot of the big tracks on it, like Crazy Train. This is like a commercial success, and it's just a little bit more rounded out. Like there aren't as many skips on this one. God tier for sure. Iron Maiden, Power Slave. A lot of people don't like this album that much compared to some of their other more popular albums. For me, I'm just gonna put it great, but definitely better than like Immortal level. Now I feel like we need another tier, but there would be too many tiers. Kill 'Em All. This is the album that I think created thrash metal. There's one other album that some people think did, but this is the one for me. I'm a thrash fan through and through. Without this album, a lot of the things that I enjoy would not exist, so it has to be God tier, and maybe the top of God tier right now. I'm actually not familiar with this cover. I think that's like a metalcore thing again, right? Like I'm thinking Trivium or something, or All That Remains. That could be completely false, and I don't know, but I don't recognize that. Anthrax, Among the Living. Definitely Anthrax's best album, and I feel like they don't get the respect they deserve sometimes. We make jokes about it, how Anthrax has no fans and everything, but they deserve some respect on their name for this album. I'm gonna put it in the God tier. Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. Okay, a lot of people don't like Dio Sabbath. I like Ozzy Sabbath more, don't get me wrong. But if you just look at this album as a different band and that's it, you don't compare it to Ozzy Sabbath, this is a damn good album, and I'm gonna have to put it in God tier. Great tier. That looks better. Well, man, this is kind of like the Motorhead thing. I don't really listen to a lot anymore, but it's worthy of being the tippy top of the great tier. Queens of the Stone Age. You know, I never really got into this band. I think Dave Grohl was the drummer on this, right? I've listened to this album a few different times just because I thought the cover was interesting and maybe that would be exciting for me. I don't know. It definitely doesn't fit my vibe like I thought it would, so I'm just gonna say not for me. I didn't think it was like horrible music, just not heavy enough for me. Not familiar with this one. I feel like this list is a lot longer than I thought it would be here. Creator, Coma of Souls, right? I love Creator. My favorite album from them is Pleasure to Kill, but this one holds up really well too. One of the better thrash bands that isn't in the big four. Like they definitely deserve a little bit more chit chat, you know. They're pretty good. I'm really thinking about this. I feel like it could almost go in God tier, but no, it's gonna go above Motorhead in the great tier. Another High on Fire album. I'm not as familiar with this one as the Blessed Black Wings. It's definitely not my favorite. I think I'm gonna have to put this one in decent. That's more so just because this is one that I've listened to like one time, never felt like going back to. Oh no, it's Limp Bizkit, the chocolate starfish one. I don't remember what it's called, but why was this made? It's kind of iconic because the campiness and the weirdness. Why am I going horse all of a sudden? I'm getting a little overworked right now. Anyways, I think it's terrible. I can't get behind Limp Bizkit no matter how kind of like memeable or funny it is. I don't like Fred Durst, and I just, no. Deftones. I never knew what this album is called. I just know it's the girl with the forehead and the boobs. Like, I don't know what that choice was. Anyways, I'm just going to say not for me once again, just like the last Deftones album. Tool again. Napalm Death Scum. I feel like this album is definitely like the gateway grindcore album. It's got a lot of short and sweet and aggressive tracks on it. They're all like 30 seconds long or something. So, I don't know. I feel like this is one of the more iconic ones in its genre. So it's gonna have to go in great. Is that Limp Bizkit again? This might just be the Limp Bizkit tier. We might have to rename it Limp Bizkit. Dark Throne Ablaze in the Northern Sky. I love this album. I also like Transylvanian Hunger. I think that's on here actually. Let's just rank them together. I'm gonna put both of them in the great tier. I feel like they're both black metal staples, and Dark Throne is one of my favorite black metal bands just because they're a little bit less unproblematic and it's not as hard to be a fan of them. I also really like Under a Funeral Moon, but I don't think that's on here. But overall, Dark Throne and these albums are just very important in the black metal scene, and they deserve the respect they have. Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood. I like glam, hair metal, whatever you want to call it. I don't really listen to this stuff anymore, but when I was younger, like 12 maybe, I loved this band. It was like all I talked about for a while. Really fun, happy, feel good music. It's not so serious. I'm gonna put it in the great tier. I feel like glam rock sort of has a place in the world. It's just when you're not trying to get super deep with it, you're just trying to have a good time. I always say it's kind of like pop music, but for people who like rock and metal. Might I add that Mick Mars, his guitar work on this album and just Motley Crue's discography as a whole gets a little bit overshadowed by the cringe aspect, I guess. Like, Mick Mars is a great guitarist and has some really cool riffs that are often overlooked. That is so hard to see. What is that? Oh, Emperor. I'm not as familiar with this one as I am the blue one. I think the blue one is on here. That's my favorite. It sort of reminds me of like a King Diamond Merciful Fate situation, but a little bit more along the lines of black metal. I'm gonna put this one in decent just because it's not as much of a standout to me. But the blue one, what is it even called? I don't even remember. In the Night Side Eclipse. I had no idea that's what that was called. I do love this one. I'm gonna put it in great. I love like the sound effects they use on this album, and like I said, it reminds me of like Merciful Fate, which is one of my favorite bands, but it has a little bit more of the like nastiness that black metal contains of. It has better production quality than some of the others like Dark Throne and Immortal, so you know, let's put it actually above Immortal. This could almost go in God tier. This is one of those black metal albums that could make it there, but still yet, it's just the genre, man. It just can't go past great for me. I don't know this album, haven't listened. Korn, isn't this just like Korn self-titled? I'm gonna put it up there with Issues. I feel pretty much the same way about that one. Don't think I've listened to this. It looks like it would be a black metal album of some sort, but never seen that. Next up is Sodom Agent Orange. This is probably Sodom's best album and one of the better like German thrash bands. I think German thrash in general just deserves more attention. I'm gonna put it up there with Creator. It's super solid all around. Opeth Blackwater Park. If you watched my last metal video, you know that I think this is a god tier album. 10 out of 10. One of the only more progressive things I can really get my brain to connect to. Something about it just speaks to me. I don't know if it's like Michael's voice or just the way that everything is set up. I feel like it makes more sense. It's not so just erratic and random. Like anytime that the song changes up, like it changes the tempo or the time signature or whatever else, I feel like it makes sense. It's not just changing for the sake of changing. It actually feels like a progression through the song and everything's more cohesive. Banger 10 out of 10 album. Next up we have Seasons in the Abyss. Wait, is that South of Heaven? No, that's Seasons in the Abyss. That is my favorite Slayer album. That one and South of Heaven are kind of tied for me. I think it's like their most like unique albums that are actually good still. Seasons in the Abyss, probably god tier actually. People think I'm a Slayer hater just because I said I don't like all of their discography. I think some of it's overrated and boring and repetitive, but I'm not a Slayer hater. I like Slayer. Come on. I'm gonna go ahead and put South of Heaven with that as well. We have Hell Awaits, which is really great, but I'm gonna put it at the top of the great tier. And, ooh, Rain and Blood. Ooh, that has to be god tier, right? It's actually like my 4th or 5th favorite from them, but I totally understand why it's so iconic. Very important thrash album, super aggressive. I understand. The Angel of Death riff. Venom, welcome to hell. It's so dramatic. Do I like this one more or Black Metal? Isn't there other album called Black Metal, or is that just the name of the main track? I can't remember, but I think I like the Black Metal track more. I really love first wave black metal, back when they still had more of like the speed metal new wave of British heavy metal sound, but with the more like satanic themes. That's the black metal that I eat up. So I might have to put Welcome to Hell in God tier. Ooh, I surprised myself there, but looking at it, I feel like that's the only place that it belongs, as well as, I'm gonna call it black metal. Is it called black metal? I don't remember. Sodom, Obsessed by Cruelty. You know, I don't remember this one all that much. I feel like I remember one song, but I don't remember the full album. I'm gonna have to put it in haven't listened just because I do not remember anything about that. I probably should have listened to more of these before I made this video. Dio, Holy Diver, you've been gone too long in the midnight sea. Definitely God tier. Cannibal Corpse, The Bleeding. Isn't this like, this is still Chris Barnes era, right? I'm like iffy about Chris Barnes' Cannibal Corpse. Is that weird to say? I don't know. Like, it hits pretty hard, but I'm gonna have to put it in decent. Like I said, I've grown out of Cannibal Corpse. I thought they were so cool and I was so edgy for liking them when I was 14 and I first found death metal. No. I'm an old school death metal fan now. Like Florida death metal, maybe some tech death. You know, that's my thing now. Another Linkin Park. I don't remember this one as much as the Hybrid Theory one, so maybe like the decent tier. I'm gonna put it below Cannibal Corpse and High on Fire. Maybe it can be above Mayhem though. Walls of Jericho is on here. I love this one. This has to go in God tier. Absolutely. Where's Keeper of the Seven Keys? I'm gonna put it right next to it because they're little buddies. Deftones, White Pony. Is it called White Pony? Because that's what I'm calling it. I think that's what it's called. Once again, not for me, not for me. Motorhead. This is just Motorhead, right? My favorite Motorhead album is Overkill, but I don't think that's on here. I'm gonna put it right there with the Ace of Spades. I get it. I love Motorhead for what they did. They're very influential, they're cool, they're badass, they don't give a fuck, but like, I don't know why I can't put them in God tier. Korn, Follow the Leader. Great will suffice with all the others. System of a Down, Steal This Album. You know, Steal This Album is just like a random bonus tracks album, so it can't really be that great, right? Like, I'll put it at the bottom of great just because System of a Down is one of my favorite bands of all time, and anything they ever made I love, no matter how shitty some people think it is. That one, not so fantastic, but Toxicity is on here, and it's definitely in the God tier. It's like up here with like my big favorites. I love this album. Absolute 10 out of 10. No flaws, no skips. Sleep, is this Dragonaut? Or, it's confused me because there's an astronaut, but isn't that the name of this one? This one is a very great album. I actually like it better than their Dope Smoker album. I'm gonna put it like, I'm trying to rank it amongst the rankings. I'm gonna put it below the Immortal right here. Wait, no, next to High on Fire. Oh, they're like twins. Yeah, well, let's actually put them right together. That's my favorite Sleep album. I thought it was called Dragonaut, but now I'm not sure. This one I'm not as familiar with, so I'll put it in haven't listened just because I don't really remember each track on this one and what its vibe really was. I don't think I've listened to this one. Electric Wizard, Dope Throne. Oh, God tier. One of my favorite doom metal albums of all time. I said I'm not really into stoner doom, but this one hits the spot. It's just so sludgy. I love that guitar tone. It sounds like they brought a vibrator to the guitar pickups or something. This one is just a vibe. I don't feel like you have to be high to enjoy it either. It really is just one of the best albums ever made. Van Halen, which one is this? The Baby Smoking a Cigarette? You know, I did not expect to see that on here. Could you consider Van Halen a glam metal band? Not really. They got their own thing going on. I don't really know, but I kind of see it the same as like Motley Crue. It's like a feel-good album. It's supposed to be fun, and Eddie Van Halen, we all know that he was amazing, and this is a good album. I'm gonna say great. It definitely deserves to be up there with like the likes of Motley Crue. It's like I don't really like the specific style of songs that Van Halen created anymore now that I'm older and have changed my tastes a lot, but God, I can still respect the hell out of Eddie Van Halen. And it looks like that's all for my list. So, man, let me look over this and see if there's any changes that need to be made. This all looks right, like, in my head. This is how I see these albums. You know, it's funny. The Why Was This Made tier, we're literally going to have to just rename that Limp Bizkit. Limp Bizkit. How do you spell biscuit? Is it like biscuit like that? I don't know. But they got their own tier because they deserve it. I'm interested to see what you guys say about the Not From Me tier. I don't know. I've noticed a pattern. I just want something a little bit more aggressive. Now that I'm looking at it, I feel like Gojira deserves to be indecent. I feel like that's a change we should be making right now. Come on. Right? I do like them better than these others here. I feel like they fit in more in this tier. You guys are probably gonna lose your shit over the Tool one, but I don't care. I don't care about the fettuccine sequence, okay? Stop telling me about it. Let me know which ones out of haven't listened that I should listen to. I have listened to the Sodom one before and like the Suicidal Tendencies, but I definitely got to revisit those because I don't really remember them. But anyways, that's all I have for my iconic metal album ranking. Let me know in the comments what you agree with and disagree with and which albums you think should have been added to the list. Let me know. Also, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it today and subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!